So let me say that, this is actually a macro paper in a finance conference. So I wanted to alert everyone. So this is this is joint work with Papa Njai and Lam Nigan at the IMF. I'll be talking about transmission of Fed announcements to emerging economies. What determines market reactions? So, it's pretty well known by now how, there was increased market volatility in emerging markets following the FOMC announcements in 2013-14. So this picture just shows the increase in government bond yields or the change in government bond yields between mid-2013 and early 2014. Couple of points from this picture. One is that, we did see increase in long-term bond yields across emerging markets, across many emerging markets. Second, the magnitude of the increase varied across countries. And third, if you look at this picture, the red, greens, and the blues indicate the different phases where this increase took place. So if you look at a country like India, most of it took place between July and December. However, if you look at a country like, say, an East European country like Hungary, most of the increase was immediately after, the famous Chairman Bernanke announcement between May and end June 2013. So against this background, the question which we ask in this paper is incredibly simple. What factors influenced market reaction following the FOMC announcements in 2013 and 14? And in particular, we focus in this paper on financial depth. That is, did countries with deeper domestic financial markets experience a differential market volatility after the FOMC announcements in 2013-14. So before going on, let me give you a quick preview of the findings. And let me also say this is really ongoing work, so we would really appreciate your, I would really appreciate your comments. So the main finding is that countries with deeper domestic financial markets actually experience smaller increase in government bond yields around the events of volatility in 2013-14. And this is true controlling for all time-invariant country characteristics as well as time-varying macroeconomic fundamentals. So controlling for macroeconomic fundamentals, what we find is that countries with deeper domestic financial markets actually experience less market reaction. So this is the plan of the rest of the talk. I'll quickly describe the literature a bit, go over the data, and then the methodology and the results before concluding. So, the literature basically, which is related to this paper are composed of two strands. First is, there's now, quite a large literature on transmission of unconventional monetary policies to emerging markets. There was a whole BIS conference on the topic. There's also work done by the fund on the issue. But interestingly, there's also a very nascent literature on the importance of country characteristics in determining market reaction. And here, our paper is most closely related to this work being done, ongoing work being done at the Fed, where basically, Ahmed Coulibaly and Zlate provide suggestive evidence using country-level OLS regressions to show that, there was market differentiation following the FOMC announcements. Then, there's work done by Eichengreen and Gupta who basically look at a change in exchange rate between May and December 2013 and then correlate it with a few characteristics. This is a slightly different paper which looks at news of Fed announcements using newspaper searches and it looks at how these news affected sort of robust emerging markets and fragile emerging markets. So the contribution of this study against this background is that, we are focusing on a much narrower question. That is, did countries with deeper financial markets have a differential market reaction after the FOMC announcement? We try to dig a bit deeper and try to present some robust evidence. And unlike the other papers, we actually, we believe we have a better identification strategy because we look at very narrow time windows around the dates of FOMC meetings and minutes in 2013-14. And the main advantages are, fairly well known that, if you're looking at 3-month period, 6-month period, the other events which have happened, for example, monetary policy actions by other central banks other than the Fed, and policy responses by the individual countries themselves. So we differ from the, the existing nascent literature in 2 aspects. One is, focusing basically on the how and whether financial depth matter, and the second is in terms of the identification strategy. So the data is pretty standard. We started with a comprehensive list of about 60 emerging markets, the definition coming from a wide range of studies, and actually looked for, wherever we could get daily data on bond yields. So we got data for about 26 emerging markets from Bloomberg. We cover the period is from January 1st, 2013 to January 22nd, 2014. We are looking at 10-year long-term government bond deals, except for a few countries where they don't have 10-year bonds. We use 8-year or 5-year. Financial depth is measured by a number of country-level variables: bank credit, M2, M3, and stock market capitalization, all of them relative to GDP, and the sources are all standard sources. So what we do is follow a 2-step methodology. So the first step is just about documenting market reactions around the FOMC announcements, and actually defining negative events based on the market reaction. And in the step 2, basically, we look at the interaction between a dummy for negative events with certain country characteristics, in particular financial depth. So this is what the first step looks like. This is change in long-term government bond yields for countries C in an M horizon. So basically, we use a 2-day horizon. So typically, FOMC announcements on Wednesdays. We look at 2-day before and 2-day after the announcement, which is about the difference between Monday and Friday. This is a dummy for the date of the FOMC announcement. And here, what we do, we use this framework to define a negative, positive, and non-event. So negative event is where the yields increase significantly. Positive event is where it decreased significantly, and all the others are non-events. So we use this framework to actually classify these dates as negative events, positive events, or non-events. The interesting thing is that, during the period we actually have all 3 sets of events. So we have a counterfactual. So the main question we ask is, did country characteristics matter in determining market reactions around negative events? But the good thing about this framework is that we actually have the counterfactual as well, because we have positive events and non-events in the same period we are looking at. So the second step is the key, where we look at the same change in government bond yields. We look at the dummy for a negative event, and we look at the interaction between country characteristic and the dummy for negative event. So the coefficient of interest is delta. We want to see how countries with certain country characteristics reacted around these negative events. This framework controls for all time invariant country-specific characteristics, and importantly, if this framework allows for, so if you have a time-varying country characteristic like bank credit or stock market capitalization, you can actually include that characteristic as well as the interaction. However, if there's a characteristic which is not time-varying, you basically still can estimate the interaction effect. So the interaction effect can be estimated whether this is time invariant or time varying. What we are interested, the key hypothesis we are interested in is whether delta is less than 0, meaning that, for a good country characteristic, if countries which have quote unquote good country characteristics, actually whether they reacted less around these events of turmoil. So this table shows the list of FOMC meetings and minutes. So we have 17, in total 17 meetings and minutes which range, from January 29th, 30th to about early January 2014. So this table basically shows the first step in the methodology where we document market reactions. So what we see is, and here what I'm showing you in the table is just some selected coefficients. Basically, so meeting 3, so all, for example, meeting 3 would stand for the May 1st meeting, and the minutes 3 are the famous May 22nd release of Fed minutes, which created a lot of volatility. So this table basically shows whether government bond yields increased or decreased. So I don't know if you can see there's an orange and there's yellow, but maybe I'm not. So basically meetings 3, 6, and 7 are where bond yields actually went down. So these are actually the positive events where the markets reacted positively. So if meetings 6 and 7 are the September and the October meetings where the Fed actually said that, no, we are not tapering, we are delaying the tapering. And that's when the markets reacted positively. The events of interest are meetings 4 and meeting 8. Meeting 3 and meeting 4 and meeting 8. Sorry, my apologies. I cannot see the difference between the yellow and the orange. So the negatives are where, the negative events are where the bond yields actually went up. So meeting 4 and meeting 8 and minute 3 and minute 7. So where the coefficient is positive and statistically significant. So basically minute 3 is the famous May 22nd release of minutes, and you can see that markets reacted strongly and positively after this. So basically, we use the simple framework to classify events as negative, positive, or non-events, and we use this in our second stage. So this is the key baseline regression. So here, what we have, the dependent variable is the 2-day change in government bond yields, pre and post event. So this is a dummy for a negative event, where the definition of negative event is based on the previous slide I just showed you. And then you have interactions with all these macro fundamentals as well as financial depth variables. And here again, I'm not showing you the entire table. This is just a snapshot because the table also has these non-interacted terms, which basically shows the effect of these country characteristics around non-events. So that's the counterfactual. So here I'm basically showing you only the interaction terms. And in column 1, we only have the macroeconomic fundamentals. In columns 2 to 4, basically we introduce these financial depth variables. So as you can see in column 1, what we find is that so a country with higher current account or a better fiscal position or a higher real GDP growth actually reacted less around these events of volatility. That's what the negative interaction term tells us. However, if you have a country with a higher inflation, the interaction coefficient with inflation is positive. So basically, if you have a higher inflation, the bond yields increase more. Or if you have a lower inflation, bond yield increase less. But what we find is that the only coefficient which is statistically significant is the fiscal balance. So telling us that countries with better fiscal positions actually reacted less around these events of turmoil. In columns 2 to 4, basically we introduce these financial depth variables. And as you can see, the interaction with these financial depth variables is negative for all measures of financial depth. Basically meaning that deeper the domestic financial market, whether measured by M2, M3, bank credit, or stock market capitalization. Countries with deeper financial markets are those where the market reaction was relatively muted, in the sense that increase in bond yields was relatively less around the events of turmoil. So a coefficient like 0.19, basically it would imply that if you consider a country like Thailand, which has a bank credit to GDP of about, I think, 120% of GDP, relative to an average of 70% of GDP. So a coefficient of minus 0.119 would imply that a country like Thailand would have about a 10 basis points lower increase in yields around the FOMC announcements. So basically, the bottom line from this table is that the countries with deeper financial markets actually reacted less and had a smaller increase in yields around the events of turmoil. What I don't show you in this table is how the country, what the non-interacted terms look like, or how did these countries with these country characteristics reacted around non-events. And basically all those coefficients, the interaction coefficients, are not statistically significant, implying that markets did not differentiate based on these country characteristics around non-events, around non-events, which are not classified as negative events based on the exercise I showed you. So then we do a series of robustness checks. The results I showed you were based on 2-day time windows, so basically 2 days before and 2 days after the FOMC announcement. We also look at a 1-day time window. In the baseline, we look at 2-day time window to allow for the time difference in emerging markets. Then we also include positive events. So the events which I showed you, for example, the September and the October events, where the Fed said, oh, no, we're actually delaying the tapering. These are the events where the markets actually reacted positively. So we include those positive events and the interaction with country characteristics to see two things. One, whether the results we are finding for the importance of country characteristics around negative events, do they remain robust? And do we see any differentiation around positive events? So what we find is that we actually, the main results remain robust, that, countries with deeper financial markets actually react less around these negative events. But we don't find much evidence of differentiation around these positive events. Instead of the level of financial depth, we ask the question whether countries which improved their financial depth, do markets differentiate across them? And we don't find much evidence of this. And then, a standard thing is to, rather than using different measures of financial depth, why not use the first principle component? And then the results remain robust to using the first principle component. Some additional findings, what we did is we looked at, some other country characteristics. For example, we looked at stance of macroprudential measures. So there's an IMF database which actually codes macroprudential measures as tightening, loosening, or not changing. So we use that to cumulate it and develop a measure of cumulative stance of macroprudential policy. What we find is that, tighter the macroprudential stance in the run-up to these tapering episodes, actually markets reacted less around these events of turmoil. Interestingly, another interesting finding is that, if countries that were more linked to China, for these countries, the market reaction was smaller around the events of turmoil, basically suggesting that maybe the linkage to China acted as a buffer. We did not find much evidence for portfolio integration or international financial integration to matter. These magnitude. This picture just shows whether the magnitude, what the economic magnitude is, and here, so basically, we are looking at the effect of one standard deviation lower vulnerability. So So it's actually one standard deviation lower vulnerability in all these. And lower vulnerability is measured by higher values of financial depth based on the results I just showed you. So let me give you an example that, for example, if we look at, say, stock market capitalization, it just says that, one standard deviation higher stock market capitalization is associated with about a 0.9% lower increase in yields. So with this, let me, stick to the time and conclude. So what we do in this paper is, provide evidence for the importance of depth of domestic financial markets in determining market reactions. And again, in theory, the result could go either way. So basically, countries with deeper financial markets are those where actually it's easier to unwind positions, and you could see larger market reactions. However, on the other hand, deeper financial markets could actually provide, some resilience to external shocks. For example, it may be easier for investors to move to other markets or to move their funds outside. So you should actually see a lower market reaction. So we actually turn to the empirical evidence to see which way the evidence goes using the FOMC announcements of 2013-14 as an experiment. So what we are finding is some evidence that actually countries with deeper financial markets are those where the market reaction was less around these events of turmoil following the FOMC announcements. So what do the results imply? Basically, the way we interpret the result is that rather than treating emerging markets as a single asset class, the evidence suggests that markets actually differentiate across emerging economies based on country characteristics, particularly domestic financial depth. And overall, deepening domestic financial markets can provide a cushion against external shocks. Thank you.
Thanks, Prachi, for the interesting presentation. So this paper, thanks to Susan, she's not here right now. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to discuss the paper because it gives a lot of food for thought. So I'll quickly summarize the paper without taking much time. So the motivation behind the work done by the authors. So as we all know that post-global financial crisis, the unconventional monetary policy by the US Fed sent investors flocking to emerging markets. So they all experienced, by and large, capital inflow surges. However, this trend was disrupted significantly last summer, in May 2013, with the Fed signaling possible tapering of the asset purchases. And what happened was, as we all know, that emerging markets across the board faced very sharp currency depreciations, increase in external financing costs, and capital flow reversals. So what the authors do in this paper is they employ event study methods around the dates of FOMC meetings and release of minutes between Jan 1st, 2013 and Jan 22nd, 2014. They define a negative event as one in which around these dates, bond yields went up. Accordingly, a positive event is one when around these dates, the bond yields actually went down. They measure market reaction using daily data on long-term government bond yields, in most cases 10-year government bond yields. And specifically, the main highlight of the paper seems to be that they focus on the role played by the depth of financial markets in explaining the reactions of these emerging markets to these events. They control for a series of macro fundamentals, country fixed effects, and do series of robustness checks and additional analysis. So now to my comments. So, before that, the main findings of the paper, the countries with the deeper financial markets experienced smaller increases in bond yields around the volatile episodes or the negative events. And they also find, interestingly, that better fiscal positions, tighter macroprudential policies, and strong trade linkages with China helped dampen market reactions. So overall, the authors conclude that it seems markets do not treat emerging markets as a single asset class. Instead, they tend to differentiate on the basis of macro fundamentals, and especially with respect to financial depth. So now to my comments. I have my comments classified into some major and minor comments. So the first comment, when I was first reading the paper, I was a little bit confused about what exactly was the objective of the paper. So there seems to be a bit of a mismatch between the title and the objective as stated in the introduction and the analysis and the results. So, for example, the paper title says that they're looking at transmission of Fed announcements. The objective states that they're systematically analyzing reactions of emerging markets to FOMC announcements. So, is the objective to assess reaction to FOMC announcements in general? If that is the case, then why focus on the very restrictive narrow period of Jan 2013 to Jan 2014 when you have access to only 17 events, of which only 7 really seem to matter because the other ones are statistically significant. But when I look at the analysis, that doesn't seem to be the case, because then it seems the objective is to assess reactions to the Fed's QE tapering related announcements. So if that is the case, I think it might be better to clarify it better in the write-up of the paper as well, that is the objective just to look at the effect of the FOMC's tapering related announcement, which seems to be the case from the analysis and the results, because there's an exclusive focus on the negative events when the bond yields went up. Or is it the case that you want to assess reactions to volatile episodes and negative effects in general, not necessarily to QE tapering related news, in which case a longer sample period might enable investigating a higher number of negative events. So that will give you much more heterogeneity in the data. The second comment is about the FOMC announcements in particular. And although this seems to be a very integral part of the paper, I think the paper could do a lot better with a little bit more discussion about what exactly happened in these FOMC meetings and announcements. In other words, what exactly are these negative events? Are all the negative events, which are let's say 4 in number in this case, related to tapering announcements, right? So some discussion on what exactly the meetings and announcements entailed would be very helpful, because I'll tell you where the confusion came when I was reading it. So the red letter day in this particular study is, of course, or any study of this literature, is the May 22nd, 2013 date, which is when not only were the FOMC minutes released, Chairman Bernanke, ex-Chairman Bernanke, gave the speech in front of the Joint Committee, right? So that was the meeting, the minutes 3, whatever. So bond yields significantly went up across emerging markets, no confusion on that. But when I go back to the preceding FOMC meeting, corresponding to the release of that minute, that is actually a positive event when bond yields went down. So this is where I got slightly confused, and I could be wrong the way it works, that if the preceding minutes are being released 3 weeks later from the actual date of the meeting, why the opposite effect on bond yields, when it was such an important event that was taking place around that time? Or does it matter at all? Maybe it doesn't matter at all. So some discussion on this, because the science definitely struck out to me when I was looking at the table. So what changed between May 1st and May 22nd? Or was it entirely because of Bernanke's speech, not so much about the FOMC minutes release? So that seemed to be the case. It was Bernanke making the speech which actually made emerging markets go through that haywire thing. Again, related confusions. For example, the June 18th, 19th FOMC meeting, which was also followed by Bernanke's press conference, bond yields went up, but when the minutes were released of the same meeting, there was no effect on bond yield. So is it because that markets had already priced in the risk, or what was happening between the date of the meeting and the release of the minutes? So I think some discussion on these dates and what was happening in between would be very helpful to understand the classification of events as negative and positive events. Especially, the reason why I'm highlighting so much on the dates is because you have a very small time period of only 1 year. So it's very easy to go deeper into every event and what was happening around that time. Third comment is about the inference from the results. So the paper says that markets differentiate across emerging markets based on country characteristics, right? So, but the results say that other than financial depth, of course, which is very important, and the only other macro characteristic which is statistically significant for negative events is fiscal balance. So there is no other country feature like current account balance or GDP growth or inflation that seems to matter when it comes to country characteristics being used for differentiation or not. The role of fiscal balance, however, is very strong, very robust across all the analysis, and is very interesting. But maybe, if not in this paper, maybe in future, it might be another factor that would be very interesting to delve into. Also because you're looking at long-term government bond yields, and the fiscal balance strikes out as a consistently significant factor. So looking more into it will definitely be very interesting. So the thing that struck me when I was reading the paper is, are the markets differentiating only during the volatile episodes, right? So that seems to be the case from Prachi's presentation as well. However, the part that she didn't present in the table, the non-negative events, One factor, however, is consistently significant in those events, which is real GDP growth rate. So I cannot also say that markets are differentiating exclusively during the volatile episodes, because the real GDP growth rate seems to matter during non-negative events. So that was something that I think should be explained a little bit better, that what exactly is the main message or inference from the paper, other than, of course, the fact that financial depth matters a lot. That is very clear. But the rest seems a little bit murky. Then I have a series of minor comments, just in one slide. So one is, the emerging markets, as we all know, experienced capital inflow surges in the run-up to the taper tantrum, so to speak. Now, is it possible that the countries that received this excess foreign investment are the ones that experienced greater increase in bond yields? And a priori, I would think that is the case, right? But the authors have not really controlled for this explicitly in the analysis. They do have a measure of financial integration, which is stock of portfolio assets over GDP later on, but I don't think that essentially takes care of capital inflow surges in the run-up to the taper tantrum. So some way of controlling explicitly for this, I think, would be very important. Second point is there, and this again, you could completely ignore it, but as an econometrician, I would always think about in terms of robustness check, is there any other indicator for measuring EM reactions? For example, asset prices, equity prices. Is that something that you could look at instead of just focusing on bond yields? And I understand using exchange rate is not an option because central bank intervention for an exchange market matters a lot. So, but equity prices could be one option. Third is, I really liked your analysis on the macroprudential measures because I haven't seen that in any paper, in fact, in this literature. So you mentioned that countries that tightened macroprudential measures are the ones which fared much better during the tapering news. Does it also mean that the countries that loosened the measures experienced a greater decline in the bond yields during the positive events? And the reason I mention this is, while you highlight a lot on the volatile episodes or negative events, there's a lot of news hidden in the positive events as well, I think. So some analysis of that would also be very helpful. Yes, I'm almost like 1 minute. So the actual tapering of the bond purchases began December 18, 2013, which is before the start of the sample period, which is when it came down by $10 billion to $75 billion. But that is not included in the sample period used in the analysis. Why is that? And would that affect the results? Any role of foreign exchange reserves or external debt in terms of countries which were affected by the taper news? Also, once the May 22nd red letter day was done and emerging markets suffered across the board, everybody took several temporary steps, be it currency market intervention, interest rate defense of currencies, etc. So what about these steps affecting the events that followed after May 22nd? There's bound to be some feedback effect for the June meeting or the July minutes release when the bond deals were responding to the FOMC meetings. Steps were also being taken by the emerging markets to counter that effect. So there has not been much of an attempt to control for those measures taken by the countries. July 2013, again, this is a little bit trivial. So essentially, the Fed indicated a little bit of loosening in 2 consecutive meetings. The question is, the countries which were affected by the May 22nd and the June bond yields going up were the same countries affected by the loosening news of the Fed. But I think the one thing that I would highlight from here is definitely the steps taken by the emerging markets to counter the Fed's policies, because there's bound to be some feedback effect. So finally, my final slide, it's of course a highly relevant and topical area, especially given Chairwoman's Janet Yellen's announcement yesterday about interest rate being raised sometime in the middle of next year and the discussions going forward in this topic. There's a very limited empirical evidence on the impact of Fed's tapering and the role played by country fundamentals. So the paper contributes very nicely to the literature. However, the 2 papers by Barry Eichengreen, Poonam Gupta, and Eisenman et al. in this field, their results contradict the results of the current paper. So they find that countries which had better macro fundamentals are the ones which were worst hit. Countries with more liquid financial markets were hardest hit by the tapering news. So I'm not saying that you'll have to, again, address this in the paper, but I guess throwing some light on why this complete difference in results. It's possible that because using the event study methodology, something that they are not using, is what's driving the change in the results. Again, so that's, of course, it's a clean identification framework, though I had one question about the dummy variable approach that struck me when I was listening to the presentation, that you don't really have the counterfactual when you're picking up only the negative events. Because in the regression, when you just have the negative events and not the negative positive together, the counterfactual is essentially absent because the dummy variable takes the value 1 for all the cases. But I could be wrong, maybe I understood something incorrectly. There's a paper that you might want to take a look at, a Bank of Canada working paper by Rai and Sushanik, released November last year. They do a very similar analysis, event study, bond yields, very similar results. So it might be worth looking at this one. 2 questions before I leave. One is, maybe for future work, is there any way to quantify the size of surprise in the Fed's announcements? Maybe using the increase in volatility of long-term US interest rate. Instead of qualitatively picking dates of meetings and minutes, is there any way of quantifying that which surprise was bigger and then taking that surprise event to do the event study? Second is, what about the duration impact of the tapering announcements? Were the permanent effect, or did it just last between one FOMC meeting and the next? So this could be worth looking into. I'm done. Thank you so much.
Time for questions and comments. Vimal?
Just one suggestion. To actually strengthen identification, you may want to run placebo checks of choosing 2 days and differences in the yields within the same sample period, so that if your identification is of that announcement, you should see that your coefficients turn insignificant on those non-announcement days. Thank you.
Jayant Verma? You should use the mic.
How do you deal with time zones in such short event horizons? I would imagine that you're getting 3 trading days after the announcement in Latin America and 2 trading days after the announcement in Asia. So there is a LATAM versus Asia dummy implicitly into that.
Yes.
See, there's just one question. There were 2-3 measures of financial depth. One of them is stock market capitalization versus GDP percent. Now, is it on a particular date that these values are taken? Because especially stock market is a very volatile thing. Or is it the average over a period of time? And will that make a difference to the...
Yeah.
Issues are rising out of inverted yield curves. Some of these emerging economies have experienced inverted yield curves. So how do we...
I want to make one comment on just locating the logic and the argument of what is going on. On one hand, we have always had this traditional idea that deep and liquid financial markets are shock absorbers, so that when there is an innovation in the order flow, the price change is small. This is the basic intuition of microstructure. In recent years, we've also been realizing, so I think there's a level 1 argument and then there's a level 2 argument. The level 1 argument is that when global money managers need to do global macro portfolio adjustments, in the short term, many emerging market securities are horribly illiquid. So the brunt of the portfolio rebalancing tends to fall on the liquid stuff. Okay, and Jayant Verma was the first person who brought this to my attention, where he was emphasizing the unique role that South Korea and India play in the emerging markets basket. These are the 2 most liquid equity markets. So when things happen in the world, a disproportionate amount of the adjustment, both on the up and on the down, happens to India. So in a perverse sort of way, you could argue that these countries are being penalized because they've done a good job of market development. Okay, this kind of argument can be made that these countries are the utility that is supporting portfolio adjustment requirements of the world economy, while Sri Lanka and Mozambique are slumbering in splendid isolation. Okay, now we've done some more work on this, and I just want to talk about a project which is not as yet complete, but you'll see the intuition fits together. So we thought that India is a great lab because there are many stocks. Okay, there are some highly liquid stocks and there are some illiquid stocks. And so once again, would you get this kind of phenomenon that do you get portfolio managers dumbly doing a trade on India, where you just do a program trade to sell 500 stocks on India and you kick off a very large impact on some illiquid stocks? Or do you see a very thoughtful response to the market liquidity and intelligently thinking about market depth before you place the orders. And for most people in this room, you will not at all be surprised to know that it is indeed the case that the money managers are very sensitive and they do not idiotically send orders to illiquid stocks. So responses to global macro news are being played out in India in the liquid stocks. The illiquid stocks in India are just being left untouched. So there is such a phenomenon going on, and yet the responses are never extreme. So I guess there's some optimization going on, and people are very carefully thinking that, okay, I need to adjust because there's been a global macro development, but I'm factoring liquidity considerations into the trades that I'm putting. Yes, Venki?
One point to add. There's also, I think, following up on earlier comment, the institutional features may vary quite a bit. For example, in India, there are FII limits to the amount of investments they could have in the debt securities. And also you might have banks acting as agents to stop the fall of yields, for a lot of, you see that in the stock market where LIC is a sort of a proxy for the government to intervene in the market during a fall. So do you see that sort of variation in the institutional frictions that could also have an impact on your variation across countries?
Prachi, would you like to respond to some of this? Whatever you feel like taking a stab at.
Thank you very much, Rajeshwari, and thanks to everyone. This was a great discussion. This is ongoing work, so we'll incorporate as much as we can. Let me just answer the easy questions. Venki's question, institutional features, we have country fixed effects in the regressions. So of course, the question is whether the institutional features are biasing our results. So in that sense, as long as the institutions are time invariant, they're controlled for. Of course, the question is whether, how these institutional features matter in determining market reaction. That if it's a time invariant institutional feature, we cannot, look at the impact because they're absorbed in the fixed effects. Then the question about placebo was a good one. I think the suggestion, we'll definitely try that. On time zones, the question on time zones is because that's why we are looking at, typically the state of the art is to look at intraday time windows. We are actually looking at 2 days before and 2 days after. We also narrow it a bit. So we precisely for the reason we are looking at a 2-day between Monday and Friday is to take into account the differences in emerging markets, the timing in time zones. But the problem is, of course, the more you, widen the horizon, your identification is less neat. So there's a trade-off. So we play with these windows a bit. Sorry?
Can't you define 0 to be the first trading day after the announcement? So 0 will be 1 day in Asia and another day in Brazil.
Right. Okay, we can try that actually. Then, on Rajeshwari's comment, let me just point out one thing. The whole point of this exercise is that during this year, we have actually negative events, positive events, and non-events. So actually, the empirical framework in the baseline regressions, basically we club the positive events and the non-events. So the non-interacted terms, the terms like, the macro fundamentals as well as the financial depth, the coefficient on the non-interacted terms actually say how these country characteristics mattered in determining market reactions around non-events. So that's a very important point, and that's that's how the framework actually advances over rest of the papers, like the Fed paper or the Icahn Green and Gupta or the other UC Santa Cruz paper, is because we actually have a counterfactual even within the year. And what we do is, even when we extend the sample to I think a couple of years where we look at more FOMC meetings, we actually see these events still come out to be negative events, what we have identified. And there is some discussion in the paper, there's a footnote in the paper. Other than that, I think your comments are well taken and we'll try to address. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Prachi. Thank you, Rajeshwari. It has been a fun session.